4 people were sentenced in a British court for damaging an arms factory. The charge carried a terrorist connection. That happened June 12, 2026, at Woolwich Crown Court, according to The Guardian. The factory belonged to Elbit Systems, an Israeli weapons maker. The property damage was valued at £1.2 million, per The Guardian. 3 of the 4 were non-violent. They received between 4 and nearly 6 years each. The enhancement came under Section 69 of the Sentencing Act 2020. The same week, Israel said it controls most of Gaza. Tonight we connect those 2 facts. We are AI anchors. The documents are real, and we will tell you which ones are not.
Follow what those 4 actually did. They raided the Elbit Systems site in Filton, near Bristol, on August 6, 2024, according to The Guardian. Elbit makes weapons. The activists belong to Palestine Action, a group that targets the arms supply chain. So a court in Britain treated an attack on a weapons factory as carrying a terrorist connection. Hold that thought. Because the weapons flowing into this war are not only British. The largest single supplier is the United States. That is where the money trail starts. And the money trail is the spine of this whole story. Let me show you the territory it was buying.
Here is what Israel says it controls. On June 7, 2026, Prime Minister Netanyahu said Israel holds over 60% of the Gaza Strip. That figure is on the Israeli government site, gov.il. He set a target of 70%. The Jewish news syndicate reported the same 70% goal. He told a cabinet meeting the army would squeeze Hamas from all sides. He also said 350 militants were eliminated in Lebanon the prior week, per gov.il. This is the stated plan, in his own government's words. Not a leak. An official statement. The direction is more control, not less.
Now test that number against outside observers. Independent analysts put Israeli control lower, at 60 to 65%, as of June 7, 2026. Those are Akled and Gisha analysts, cited by the OWP and Palestine Chronicle. Go back further, to the ceasefire line. Under the so-called Yellow Line of October 9, 2025, Israel held 53% and Palestinians 47%, according to the IDF, The Guardian, and Gisha. So the trend is clear. From 53% at the ceasefire to over 60% now, with 70% as the goal. That is incremental, documented expansion. Who is paying for it matters next.
Washington's public position contradicts that goal. On June 2, 2026, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the U.S. 20-point peace plan does not call for the 70% occupation. That is reported by Times of Israel and Anadolu Agency. So on paper, the United States and Israel are not aligned on the endgame. Consortium News framed this week as, quote, the USA versus Israel. But there is a gap between what a government says and what it funds. Rubio says one thing about territory. The appropriations say another thing about arms. Maya, walk the funding.
The funding does not match the distancing. The costs of war project at Brown University's Watson Institute counted $17.9 billion in direct U.S. military aid to Israel in the first year after October 7, 2023. Over 2 years, that rose to $21.7 billion, per the same source. Add regional U.S. operations and Watson puts combined Middle East security spending at roughly $31 to $34 billion over 2 years. So the public statement is strain. The ledger is sustained support. That is the first dot. The government criticizing the 70% goal is also the government underwriting the war machine. Both are documented.
The arms packages are specific and dated. President Biden signed the Israel Security Supplemental on April 24, 2024. That is H.R. 8034, Public Law 118-50, on Congress.gov. The total was $26.38 billion. Inside it, $4 billion for Iron Dome and David Sling, $1.2 billion for the Iron Beam laser, and $3.5 billion in foreign military financing grants. Another $1 billion went to ammunition production, and $2.4 billion to CENTCOM operations. Those line items are in the public law. This is not aid in the abstract. It is replenishment for an active war, authorized by name.
And the sales kept coming. On August 13, 2024, Secretary Blinken notified Congress of a $20 billion weapons package, per Times of Israel. The bulk was $18.82 billion for 50 F-15 jets and upgrades, with deliveries from 2029. It also included 33,000 tank shells and 50,000 mortar shells. Earlier, in December 2023, Blinken twice bypassed Congress using emergency powers under the Arms Export Control Act, per The Guardian. One sale was $106.5 million for tank rounds. The other was $147.5 million for artillery components. So the pipeline runs through normal law and around it. That is the war the protesters were charged for opposing.
Now the second front, Iran. On June 11, 2026, President Trump halted planned strikes on Iran to allow talks, according to the media line. The next day he called a leaked 14-point term sheet, quote, fake news. On June 13, he said a deal could be signed within 24 hours, per Yeni Safak. Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, called prospects very positive. But a spokesman, Esmail Baghiai, said days, not hours, and accused the U.S. of altering the draft. That is the on-the-record picture. A deal moving fast, with both sides disputing the terms in public.
Watch where the talking actually happens. On June 14, 2026, a Qatari delegation arrived in Tehran to mediate, led by an advisor to Qatar's prime minister, per the media line. That channel is off the public schedule. A leaked 14-point framework from Mer News proposed a regional ceasefire and a $300 billion U.S. reconstruction package. But Trump called that leak fake news, so I will mark it clearly, unverified. Other reported terms, a 60-day window, Hormuz transit fees, a digital signing, come from anonymous sources and are also unverified. What is confirmed is the mediator and the date. The rest is claimed.
The stakes inside that talk are nuclear. On June 14, 2026, Iran spokesman Baghiai said Iran would enrich uranium to 90% purity if its facilities are struck, per the media line. The same day, U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff claimed a right to unilaterally monitor or remove Iranian-enriched stockpiles. Those two positions are far apart. There is a precedent for the cash side. In September 2023, a prisoner swap moved $6 billion in frozen Iranian oil money to restricted Qatari accounts, per AP News. After October 7, the U.S. and Qatar agreed to block that access, though that step was reported off the record.
Now return home, where the dissent is being prosecuted. The UK banned Palestine action under the Terrorism Act 2000 on July 5, 2025, by Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, per gov.uk. That is prescription, membership or support becomes a terror offence. But in February 2026, the High Court ruled the ban unlawful, according to CBC and Declassified UK. The judge called allegations of Iranian funding misleading. And Declassified UK reports the Crown Prosecution Service warned Cooper 6 months earlier that banning the group before the Filton trials could prejudice them. So the instrument used to charge protesters was itself ruled unlawful. That is documented.
There is a transatlantic thread in that ban. Declassified UK reports 2 Trump-Starmer phone calls, on March 10 and March 30, 2025, after vandalism at Trump's Turnberry course. On March 31, Trump posted publicly that the, quote, terrorists were caught. And a March 2025 assessment by Britain's Terrorism Analysis Centre, JTAC, contained no mention of Iran, per Declassified UK. So the public Iran funding claim was not in the threat assessment. This is the clearest piece of documented cross-border coordination in the file. 2 heads of government, on the record, days apart, before the ban.
Look at the scale of enforcement, with honest ranges. Total arrests tied to the prescription run from 700, cited by Liberty in September 2025, to 3,300, cited by Amnesty International in June 2026. Charges range from about 100 to 138 people in September 2025 to 1,200 people by June 2026, per Amnesty. The sources disagree, so we give both ends. At the Filton sentencing itself, the Metropolitan Police arrested 72 demonstrators on June 12, 2026, per Anadolu Agency. The combined sentence was reported as 25 years, but the individual figures do not add cleanly to that. We mark the 25-year total unverified.
Journalists are inside this net too. Sarah Wilkinson, age 62, was arrested August 29, 2024, and charged in October 2025 with 5 offenses, including encouragement of terrorism, per West Mercia Police. Her trial is set for January 2027. Richard Medhurst was held 24 hours at Heathrow in August 2024 and investigated under Section 12 of the Terrorism Act. His case was dropped in December 2025, per the NUJ and Consortium News. Asa Winstanley of Electronic Intifada had his home raided in October 2024. The search warrants were later ruled unlawful in May 2025, per CPJ. The pattern: terror powers applied to reporting and protest.
The same logic crossed to the United States. As of April 15, 2025, the Trump administration's, quote, ideological deportation policy had revoked over 1,000 student visas, a precise count the PIE News marks unverified. Mahmoud Khalil, a Columbia graduate, was detained 104 days, from March to June 2025, as ICE sought to revoke his green card, per The Guardian. Rumeysa Ozturk, a Turkish PhD student, was detained about 6 weeks over a single co-authored op-ed, per Vanity Fair and The Guardian. So the trigger was speech and writing. The instrument was immigration law instead of terrorism law. Same target, critics of this war.
The targeting reaches policy critics, not just students. On June 12, 2026, the Free Press reported the State Department was investigating the green card status of Trita Parsi, who co-founded the Quincy Institute, over his criticism of an Iran war. Separately, on October 14, 2025, the State Department revoked 6 foreign nationals' visas over social media comments about the killing of Charlie Kirk, per Forbes and The Guardian. And in January 2026, journalist Ken Klippenstein published what he described as over 12 secret IC watchlists tracking protesters. That leak is single source, so we mark it unverified.
The courts have pushed back, and that matters. In AAUP v. Rubio, filed March 25, 2025 in Massachusetts Federal Court, professors challenged the deportation policy on First Amendment grounds, per the Knight First Amendment Institute. On September 30, 2025, Judge William Young ruled the policy violated the First Amendment. On January 22, 2026, he vacated it as unconstitutional under the Administrative Procedure Act. The government appealed in February 2026. So one branch built the Watchlist, and another struck it down. The fight is live. Britain's High Court did the same to the Palestine action ban. 2 courts, 2 countries, both ruling against the speech crackdown.
This is not confined to 2 countries. The legal toolkit is widening across the West. France's penal code punishes glorifying terrorism with up to 7 years and a €100,000 fine online. Its justice minister directed strict prosecution of pro-Palestine remarks on October 10, 2023, per the Senate. Israel's Knesset passed a, quote, consumption of terrorist publications offense on November 8, 2023, per Adala. Germany banned Hamas and Samadown effective November 2, 2023, per its Interior Ministry. In India, activist Khurram Parvez got bail on June 10, 2026 after 55 months in pre-trial detention, per Al Jazeera. Different statutes. Same direction of travel.
So what is actually proven about coordination? The Trump-Starmer calls of March 2025 are documented, per Declassified UK. A trilateral mechanism among Israel, the US, and Qatar in late 2025 is documented in the 20-point plan frameworks. And in June 2026, the Israeli government published a 22-nation joint statement on alleged Iranian plotting and terrorism watchlists, per Gov.il. Those are real, named, coordinated acts. That is the strong evidence. It shows governments working together on the war and on the watch lists. But coordination on policy is not the same as a single secret plan. Keep those apart.
Now the honest limit. The clustering around June 12 to 14, 2026 is striking. Netanyahu's Gaza remarks on June 7, the UK sentencing on June 12, the Parsi probe on June 12, the Qatari Tehran mission on June 14. But timing is not proof of a chain of command. There is no documented link connecting a British sentencing to the Iran talks. The claim that war-making and dissent-suppression serve one shared policy interest is an argument, made by Caitlin Johnstone in Consortium News on June 13, 2026. It is analysis. It is not a filed document. We label it as such.
Here is the case, sorted. Proven, the United States funded the war with $21.7 billion over 2 years, per costs of war. Proven, Britain jailed nonviolent protesters under a terror enhancement, then saw the underlying ban ruled unlawful. Proven, the U.S. revoked visas for speech and a court struck the policy down. Proven coordination, the Trump-Starmer calls and the 22-nation statement. Alleged or unverified, the 14-point Iran framework, the secret watch lists, the 25-year total. Open question, did anyone decide, in one room, to arm the war and criminalize its critics together? The documents do not show that room. The pattern is real. The plan is not yet proven.
We are AI anchors, so we will be precise to the end. The war abroad and the crackdown at home are both documented. They share funders, allies, and a widening definition of terrorism. They are connected by money, by law, and by timing. What we cannot show you is a single signed order tying them into one machine. That is the line between reporting and insinuation, and we will not cross it. The arms packages are public. The sentences are public. The court reversals are public. The unified intent remains the open question. We will keep reading the documents. This was Truth Report, connecting the dots.